Week 6 is in the books. Week 7 is upon us. These are my SEC Power Rankings entering Week 7 of the 2024 college football season. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. This segment brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com. Use promo code SECU and sign up to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 or more lineup. Again, guys, that's prizepicks.com. Promo code SECU to get your $50 bonus today. A wacky week 6 of college football is officially in the books. And before we turn our attention to week 7, we look at my SEC Power Rankings after 6 complete weeks of play as we pull up each of my selections and start at number 16. Now, as you can imagine, after the craziness and the upsets that we had specifically in the SEC, there's going to be a lot of shuffling here when it comes to the SEC Power Rankings. Where there's not shuffling is at the bottom. Because at number 16, we start with a very familiar team, that being Jeff Lebby and the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Again, guys, I don't know what it would take for State to move out of the cellar outside of doing the unthinkable and winning a couple SEC games. It's a total rebuild in Starkville, and that hasn't changed in the span of a week, as again, they stay firmly in the cellar at number 16. At number 15, I've got the Auburn Tigers. Listen, a spirited effort, gave Georgia a game for quite some time. I think what you saw, guys, was when Auburn doesn't shoot themselves in the foot, doesn't turn the football over, that team's got talent. The problem with Auburn is I can't trust them to do that on a consistent week-in, week-out basis. Who's the second worst team in the SEC? There's been some debate about that on the timeline and on social media this week. Right now, guys, I think it's the Auburn Tigers, and that's why I've got them in the 15 spot. At number 14, guys, I've got the South Carolina Gamecocks. Had an opportunity to gain some respect against Ole Miss. You felt like if you're a South Carolina fan, you got robbed in that LSU game, and you come out against Ole Miss off the bye week. And I know, listen, guys, Ole Miss, a team thought to be a college football playoff favorite in the preseason, but you come off the bye week at home in front of a raucous crowd and play about as poorly as you could. The Gamecocks have got real problems on the offensive side. The offensive line is still a major deficiency, even at quarterback, right? Is Lenoris Sellers really the answer? Some fans are clamoring for Robbie Ashford. That team's defense is going to have to be its saving grace because offensively, it's still a work in progress, and I just don't know that they can go out there and outscore anybody left on their schedule without the defense and special teams giving them some help. At number 13, I've got the Florida Gators. Guys, Florida with a really nice win over the weekend. Really, it went under the radar as they beat UCF as a home underdog, believe it or not. That being said, I'm leaving Florida in the 13 spot right now from last week to this week. Nice win, but now as you get back into SEC play, I want to see it against more elite competition. Even though Florida was an underdog, you felt like it was a game. Hey, they're either going to win or this is the fired by Monday game for Billy Napier. Give Billy Napier and that team credit. Rallying around him, they get the win. Now the challenge in Knoxville awaits this weekend. At number 12, guys, and my biggest faller of the weekend, the Missouri Tigers. What is the letter of the week for Mizzou? F. Why is that the letter of the week? Because it stands for fraudulent, for fraud. And yes, if that sounds harsh, it's supposed to be. Because you know what, Mizzou? You had an opportunity in College Station against the Texas A&M team that looked really good. We'll get to them shortly, but not world beaters. And you got blasted. Guys, admittedly, a lot of this move down, why is it so drastic? It's not just the one game against A&M, although I could justify if it was. It's a couple weeks in the making. You struggle with Boston College. You struggle with Vandy, and you cheat death in that game. And then it all kind of came to a head against Texas A&M. I still think Missouri's a solid football team, but guys, they feel more like a 7-5 or 8-4 team right now than anything. They have not looked impressive really at any point this season. At number 11, I've got the Oklahoma Sooners. They prepare for the Red River Shootout. Oklahoma coming off the bye week, so no movement for them. Going to have their opportunity to gain even more respect. Sitting at 4-1. Listen, I think in a good spot. I don't know many OU fans that wouldn't have taken a 4-1 start. Going to have an opportunity to gain even more respect when they take on the Texas Longhorns in Red River on Saturday in Dallas. At number 10, how about those freaking Vanderbilt Commodores, man? The legend of Diego Pavia continues to grow. The goalposts there on the west end make their way to the Cumberland River, to the bottom of it, because Vandy beats the number one ranked team in college football, the Alabama Crimson Tide. Guys, what a game. What an upset. If you want to call it the biggest upset in SEC history, fine. Either way, Clark Lee and company pull off the shocker of the college football season. I bumped them up. And guys, you're going to notice with the power rankings, Vandy's at 10. They're behind Bama. Why is that? Because, guys, it still matters. What do you think would happen on a neutral field this weekend? Okay? You're not going to have teams going from 1 to 15 or 15 to 1 just because of one game. But Vandy making a significant jump for us and can continue to do so if they keep winning. How do they follow up the win over Bama when they go on the road to Kentucky? That's the big question that I have for the Commodores. A challenge unlike any other that they've ever had for Clark Lee and company in Nashville. Number 9, how about those Arkansas Razorbacks as well? Arkansas, the game that we were at in Fayetteville, pulls off the shocker against Tennessee, taking down Nico and the Balls. Guys, Arkansas is a dangerous football team. We talked about this going into the game. If they're not shooting themselves in the foot and they're not turning the football over, this Arkansas team is really, really dangerous. Taylon Green played his best game so far, but they've got Jaquindon Jackson at running back. They've got some big-time weapons at wide receiver. Their offensive line looked as good as it looked all year. And defensively, Travis Williams, their defensive coordinator, is doing as good a job as anybody when it comes to maximizing the talent he has on the defensive side of the football. So I love what I saw from Arkansas. They now go in their bye week, and guys, in a couple weeks, huge game for Sam Pittman in this program. If you keep winning, they keep getting bigger. And what do you got now? The battle for the Golden Boot when LSU comes to town in about a week and a half or so. At number 8, I've got the Kentucky Wildcats. Guys, Kentucky sitting in that 8th spot. Again, I still like what I see from the Cats. They will host, by the way, the Vanderbilt Commodores this upcoming weekend. But Vandy's still another one of those teams, guys. Again, obviously the bye week. We haven't seen them since the Ole Miss game, which is a really impressive showing, obviously. Kentucky, how do they follow that up, right? Again, coming off the bye week, had an opportunity to get healthy. They're going to use Brock Vandagriff, use Gavin Wimsatt in the running game. Defensively, as salty as any, the question for Kentucky is all tied back to what do they do offensively. I feel like that's a question for a lot of teams in the SEC right now. Speaking of, at number 7, I've got the Tennessee Volunteers. They drop a couple spots, obviously, guys, falling in Fayetteville. Listen, I still think Tennessee is a really good team. I'm not selling all of my Tennessee stock. But I will say this. I saw some things in that Arkansas game that are fixable, but that are concerning. Number 1, the offensive line got bullied. They got flat out bullied. Number 2, does Josh Heupel trust Nico Iamaleava? Does he trust him? And guys, I'll take it a step further. There was an incredible amount of hype around Nico. And I think deservedly so. The kid's skill set speaks for itself. But it's like we all forgot, oh yeah, he's a young quarterback. He hasn't mastered this thing yet. One bowl game against Iowa make him a Heisman Trophy contender. It does not, right? Against even competition that's more than warm bodies, guys, Nico's looked average. Nico has looked very, very average. And as someone who was there in person on Saturday night, I can tell you, he looked average, man. He looked average. And I don't really understand it. I don't comprehend it when you've got that running game and Dylan Sampson. You've got these weapons on the outside. It's like they're holding something back. Or maybe Nico himself doesn't trust himself. I don't know what it is, but they better get it figured out quickly. Defensively, they're elite. Defense is not why they lost that game to Arkansas. But offensively, which I can't believe I'm saying, they've got to show they can do it against decent competition. The Florida Gators await Tennessee this weekend. We shall see how they respond. And number 6, I've got the Texas A&M Aggies. Guys, I mentioned earlier, the big win in College Station. Guys, shout out to Mike Elko for having the stones to make a move at the quarterback position. Marcel Reed had been playing well or playing good enough, had been winning you games. But Mike Elko looked at it and said, you know what? Connor Wigman's healthy. And for us to be the best version of ourselves, we've got to have Connor Wigman in the football game. Connor Wigman's got to be our starting quarterback. Guys, this is a move that could have backfired and went so poorly. But Mike Elko said, you know what? I know all the outside noise. Everybody's telling us, you got to play Marcel Reed. You got to play Marcel Reed. Mike Elko said, I'm here to tell you, no, we don't. Because I know my football team. I know what I've got in this kid and Connor Wigman. And guess what he does? He goes out there and plays arguably as good as he could have played in that football game. And Texas A&M bullied Missouri. Now, who did we learn more about? Missouri, Texas A&M. That's debatable. But I tell you this, and people scoff and they laugh it off. Guys, it's time to start having a college football playoff conversation when it comes to the Aggies. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying they're making it, but it's time to at least start having that conversation. Because if they're getting that Connor Wigman every time out, the Aggies are a real contender. There's no question in my mind. And number 5, I've got the Ole Miss Rebels, guys. They jumped back up after trouncing South Carolina. A good win, especially after the Kentucky game. There was so much uncertainty for Ole Miss, obviously, going into the week. And what are they going to be? They could lose to South Carolina. They go out there, handle their business. Defense was dominant. It wasn't even a great performance, and they still win by 24 points. But solid, a get-right game, a bounce-back game, whatever you want to call it. Now they go on the road to Death Valley. In a game that all of a sudden, guys, I don't know that you call it an elimination game when it comes to the playoff, but I don't see how Ole Miss makes the playoff if they don't beat LSU in Baton Rouge. So huge opportunity upcoming. Ole Miss right now in that 5 spot. Speaking of the LSU Tigers, I've got them at number 4. The Bayou Bengals vault their way up to the 4 spot. That game between LSU and Ole Miss, obviously, there's going to be a changing of the guard if one or the other happens. Right now, guys, listen, LSU has been chaotic as any. But while they've been chaotic, since week 1, they've found ways to win football games. This is their biggest challenge yet. We'll see what version of LSU shows up. But, guys, Death Valley at night. Pick against the Tigers at your own risk. Garrett Nussmeier's got to show something this week. He's got to take a step forward, be good under pressure. He's going to feel it. He's made too many mistakes when being pressured and critical mistakes. He cannot do this week against Ole Miss. And then defensively, can LSU's defense get that stop that evaded them all last season? That's the big question. Number 3, I've got the Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, I'm going to get pushback for this. Chris, why in the world is Bama so high after they just lost to Vandy? Hear me out, guys. Hear me out. If you move Bama down to, say, 7 or 8 or 9 or wherever people want them to be, I'm not ready to sell all the stock on Bama that they're no good this year. That's going to be an 8-4 team. That's going to be a 7-5 team. I'm just not ready to go there. They got beat by Vandy. That was no fluke. But, guys, like I mentioned, what you think's going to happen or what I think's going to happen on a neutral field matters. Guys, if Bama and Vandy lined up this weekend in the parking lot, I'd pick Vandy all over again. Or excuse me, I'd pick Alabama all over again. I would pick the Crimson Tide all over again. I guess, guys, what's really tough for me, too, I was in Tuscaloosa a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks, watching Alabama throttle Georgia for 30 minutes. I know what happened in the second half, but I watched that Bama team. And then you see what happened in Nashville. So I'm like, I'm kind of torn. I'm like, what is Alabama at this point? I bumped them down to 3 from 1. I'm not ready to move them to the middle of the pack and say they're officially a middle of the pack SEC team. They got a big game this weekend against South Carolina. They got to bounce back. We'll see if they do. Right now, I'm going Bama 3. Going Bama 3 right now. Number 2, I've got the Georgia Bulldogs. Again, for those same people that would say, Chris, what in the world? Bama beat Georgia. Bama just lost to Vandy. And with that being said, guys, on a neutral field right now, I'd ride with the Dogs to beat Alabama. I would, 100%. Based off what I've seen. I mean, Georgia almost beat them at their place after they trailed 30-7.5. So right now, I give Georgia the nod at number 2. And then at number 1, guys, it's all about hook 'em. Texas. The Texas Longhorns in that one spot, the only undefeated in the SEC. And Texas certainly with a big opportunity and a big weekend upcoming in the Red River Shootout against the Oklahoma Sooners, a game that, guys, it's no guarantee. No matter how you feel about these two teams, it is no guarantee when those two square off. But right now, I would say Texas at the top of the SEC, and they are at the top of my SEC power rankings entering Week 7. So, guys, do you agree with me? Do you disagree? How would you power rank the teams of the SEC entering Week 7 of the 2024 college football season? Guys, that's going to do all for me. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Again, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast where we get those. You can also find us across all social media platforms as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. Until next time, guys, I'm Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we'll catch you on the other side.